What is happening, everybody, and welcome. This is episode number 54 of RizzoCast, and I'm joined today by none other than Steve Berman. He's a staff writer for The Athletic. He covers Bay Area media. He covers professional sports, some of the sports teams here. But you know him as Bay Area sports guy. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Steven. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And a nice name on your podcast, too, the RizzoCast. I like
Yeah,
that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, Rizzo was a nickname in high school, so I just kind of rolled with it. It was something stupid at the beginning, like Throwing Strikes podcast or something like that, and it just I hung a fastball, so I got rid of it. No, but yeah,
Nice.
RizzoCast. I like the name of it too. But yeah, thanks for coming on. So let's we're gonna talk some media stuff, some a few things on the two Bay Area baseball teams here. Let's start with opening day. So the Giants back to 500 after a big series win against the Padres. Are there any takeaways from this first week? I know there's been some, etchy moments with the bullpen, and there's been some offense and a lot of home runs. What are kind of your takeaways from this first week of Giants baseball?
I honestly think that as far as it could have gone, this is as good as I really think fans should hope for this team. I know 3-3 isn't like an amazing record, but 3-3 on the road with a road series against the Padres that you won is pretty outstanding. And really, just I wasn't able to watch yesterday's game live. I watched it last night, pretty late actually, and I was just struck by how fantastically played that game was. It seemed like a playoff game, especially this early in the season. I mean, it helped they had Snell against Gosman, and the quality of the pitching was great. Just the quality of everything going on was great. The at-bats were great. The defense was solid. Dubon made an incredible play in that game. I just felt like the Giants looked like they belonged against the Padres, who suddenly, especially with Tatis having that injury, he's going to come back, I guess, soon and test it out. But they don't look quite as rugged as much of a juggernaut as people have thought, maybe. And Dodgers are obviously going to be awesome in the class of the division, but starting pitching being as good as it was, yeah, I think the offense is going to figure out a way to put together some hits. And it just struck me that they look like a legit contender, maybe not a contender for the pennant or anything like that, but they look like a solid team, especially watching that game yesterday.
Yeah, and pitching is going to be, you're gonna win games and lose games on the mound with this team, and I think that's going to be an important aspect. But I like what you said about a team effort yesterday, and we're recording this on Thursday. The win was on Wednesday that we were talking about, and even Gabe Kapler, the manager, tweeted something like, "I like this team effort. We played together today." And Kapler, I want to go to him for a second. He's a guy that he's in his first year now with fans watching him at Oracle Park. I know he's going to say it's just another game come the home opener, but there's got to be some butterflies for him. And I asked Kerry Crowley about this. The fan base has kind of done a complete 360 on Gabe Kapler. I know there's some that are still upset at the hiring, and there are some that hate his brand of baseball and the new sabermetrically sound ways that he manages. But there's also some that have kind of changed their mind about him and how he handled the pandemic and his transparency during the social justice the social justice protests last season, and how he handled a team that wasn't supposed to do much and ended up near 500. So what have you noticed? Because I know, I guess, unfortunately, kind of you're in tune with the fan base, which could get sorry about that sometimes, but what have you noticed from the fans in terms of giving Gabe Kapler more of a chance after last season?
First, I would never complain about fans, because if people didn't care about this, then I wouldn't have a job or, any reason to be doing any of this kind of stuff.
We
So
wouldn't be here right now.
exactly. No, that's what makes it all go. I do think that the baseball I've already seen this first week, and it's just the first week, seems, and maybe it's just my own psychological thoughts going, it's a placebo effect kind of deal where I'm just believing it's true, but it seems like the baseball is a little crisper, a little better with some fans in the stands. I don't think it matters that much that it's only 8 or 10,000 people. It's just, it seems more normal to everyone. I mean, in the major leagues, guys, the Giants are drawing like 5,000 people a game back in the 70s and 80s a lot of the time. So it's not that uncommon to have these kind of crowds. As far as Kapler, I think that a lot of the stuff is kind of hit or miss with like the social justice stuff. To some people it's great, some people it's annoying, right? To me, I think it's good that he was that way. It's just kind of the way I lean, but not everyone loves that kind of thing. The I think that he had the controversy going on in LA with the whatever happened in that hotel room with the minor league players and that girl, and how he didn't quite go up the chain of command the way he should have, or gone to the authorities like he probably should have. But he came out and owned that right at the beginning, and that was kind of the big controversy when he was first hired. And I think people just kind of thought his style personally was a little bit off-putting, and he didn't have that great of a reputation in Philly. But the main thing I think for Giants fans that have made them turn the corner on Kepler is that the team got better last year. They were much better at the end of the season than they were at the beginning of the season. And that's a huge deal. And that's not, I mean, as great as a manager as Bruce Bochy was, you couldn't always say that about some of those teams, especially at the end there. The teams just seemed that they kind of Groundhog Day, doing the same thing every single day and expecting a different result, same kind of approach to the plate, same kind of pitching, and nothing was really changing. You could tell, I think that Kepler's coaching staff deserves a lot of credit too, and the players for buying in, but especially hitting wise, the hitting approach was night and day better in 2020 than it was in 2019. And it got better as the season went on. The defense was horrendous in the first like 2-3 weeks of the season. And then by the end of the year, it wasn't really a problem. The bullpen was awful, especially in that A's series. And it got better and better as the year went on. So I think fans just want to see a team get better and grow. And over a 60-game period, which isn't that big, they grew quite a bit last year. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a reason to be a little bit more interested in what they might do this year.
Yeah, they had, one of the fifth or sixth best OPS, I think, in baseball last year. So
Yep.
it's definitely a step in the right direction for them. Speaking of that A's series, which arguably probably cost, or I think it's factual that it did cost the Giants a playoff spot in the end. But speaking of the A's, they got out of the gate kind of the opposite, 0-6. They finally picked up a game yesterday afternoon at the O.Co Coliseum against the Dodgers. They lost some pieces that make me a little concerned. Simeon, and they replaced him with Elvis Andrus. Liam Hendricks was lost. What kind of team is this? Is this a team that we're expecting to be a 500 team? Is this still a playoff team favored to win the American League West? Where are you standing in terms of the A's? And I know it's still very early in the year, but I think the common phrase that I've heard so much is you can never win a World Series in April, but you could definitely lose one. So where are you standing with the A's?
Well, they're a very injured team right now.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem. Trevor Rissotto, it was announced today that he had surgery. That's going to be a season ender, it looks like. He has, I think it was thoracic outlet syndrome kind of deal with the shoulder. They had to remove one of his ribs in the surgery. So they signed him for $11 million to be a flame-throwing closer and hopefully at least approximate what Liam Hendricks is doing, and he won't be able to throw a pitch for the A's during the regular season. That's a huge crushing blow because there's no obvious contender to be that guy in that ninth inning role. On the other hand, if you're not having the lead most of the time, then it doesn't really matter if you have a closer. And the offense hasn't looked that great so far either. I mean, they just looked awful the first two series of the year. They did win on Wednesday, a nice little 10th inning win against the Dodgers to sort of salvage something out of their homestand. I was there at opening day. They looked terrible. The next 2 days, they were just as bad. Day after that, you figure, okay, they're not going to lose 4 in a row against the Astros. They did and got punked while doing it, just destroyed again, give up at least 8 runs in all those games. I don't know what to expect from the A's. I'm not expecting great things, to be honest. I think that they've patched this together to a certain extent, and seems like the floor has kind of come out from under them. Now, Chapman was the guy who kind of carried them to a win on Wednesday, and he's a guy who's capable of carrying a team for a multiple week stretch. And Ramon Laureano is actually, when healthy, he got hurt as well earlier, missed a couple of games with the sliding into first base with his wrist. He's a guy I think that is huge for them as well, energy-wise. Matt Olson had a little dinged up deal. I heard he might go on the injured list, but he's playing on Thursday. He's DHing, which is rare for him, but he is playing. So they're not going to put him on the IL. So I don't know. It maybe Chapman can sort of pull them up and make them a decent enough team. And then, Billy and David Force like to tinker and at the deadline, maybe figure out some stuff. But I don't know. It's just, they don't seem like they have a true number one starter at this point. I love Bassett, but he's not quite that. Luzardo's got all the talent in the world, but he hasn't been able to really put it together consistently yet. The bullpen now is in shambles because of the Rosenthal loss. It's just everything is, who's the closer? Is it Diekman? Are they going to try Trevino, Wendelken, Sergio Romo? I mean, he's the only guy really with any extensive closing experience, but I don't know if he's got that left in the tank. So I don't know. I'm not liking what I'm seeing so far from the A's, of course, but it is early. They can go on a huge stretch and make it respectable. But if I had to bet money, I would not put money on them making the playoffs this season for the first time in a couple of years.
Yeah, I think it depends on how the Angels play too, because they're a team that a
Yep.
lot of people are expecting to do some big things. They need pitching though, so that's always been the trend with the Angels. What's going on? Because I know you wrote about this recently. What's the current status of the ballpark scenario in Oakland? I know this is a type of thing where for a lot of outsiders, it's I'll believe it when I see it. And I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I don't think it's going to I can't see it happening until it happens, if that makes sense. So where are we standing right now with the ballpark? I believe in the Howard Terminal location. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's pretty complicated situation. So right now there's multiple legal battles that have yet to be fought. The A's have successfully what they call fast tracked. The A's don't like that term, but streamlined, whatever. They have this this law that they got passed, AB 734 in California. That means that if the project is approved by the city council, any litigation from outside interests, like the port businesses like Schnitzer Steel and others in that vicinity that don't want the A's to build there, any legal cases would have to be figured out within 270 days, as opposed to being able to just sue and stretch the thing out for years and years, and nothing gets built. Now, the city council hasn't voted yet. The A's are saying that they believe that the city council will vote on the project by the end of the year. The environmental impact report has been released. It is well over 1,000 pages. Thousands of pages of appendices. It's very difficult to read. It's a slog. Even if it was short, it would be tough to read just because of the legalese and the way that they describe everything. So everyone has this small little period of time, I think until April 27th or something, to review that and comment, put public comments up about what they think about the environmental impact report. I've been out to the site. I took a trip out there just to see what it looks like. It's nondescript shipping containers and trucks and things. But what's the problem? It could be a beautiful location because you're pretty much right on the bay on the port there, but the problem is what's underneath the concrete, the asphalt that's there. There's been a lot of shipping and other industrial uses for years and years. So cleanup of that toxic soil is going to be a problem. Are the A's just going to put soil on top of it to worry about sea level rise? Because they do plan to build up the site by about 4 feet to account for sea level rise over the next 100 years. Or they can actually excavate all that soil, take it out, dispose of it somewhere safely, and then put a bunch of soil on top. And there's a lot of money that goes into this kind of stuff. So I know I'm probably getting too into the weeds. I've been studying this stuff way too much. But the Giants had a very similar problem at what was originally Pac-Bell Park, where they had a bunch of toxic soil from, all this shipping and other industrial stuff that was going on back in the last century. So they dumped a bunch of toxic soil at the Altamont landfill. And then some bureaucrat was like, hey, wait a minute, this is too toxic. You guys weren't supposed to do this. And so that was back in 99. And so this kind of stuff happens with all these projects, but there's a lot that's in front of the A's if they're going to get this done. The A's put an optimistic face on it, but I don't know if I would exactly bet on it happening, but who knows? I mean, if the city of Oakland really wants it to happen, then it could definitely get built.
Yeah, I think everybody in the Bay Area, even Giants fans, would hope that the A's get a new ballpark just for the sake of baseball in Oakland. All right, moving on. I've always wanted to ask you this: how did you get the name Bay Area Sports Guy? I know that's what your site was named. So where did that name come from?
Well, it's kind of funny that my ex-girlfriend actually gave me a website for Christmas, and she named it the Sports Guide. At the time, Bill Simmons was called the Sports Guy, and I was like, oh, "Thank you so much for doing this." You knew I wanted to write. I was freelancing for newspapers at the time, covering like high school sports and stuff. But I wanted to write about, what I was interested in, what I was watching on a, nightly basis, stuff like the Giants, the A's, the Warriors, the 49ers, that kind of thing. So because all the URLs were purchased, we switched them to Bay Area Sports Guy because we had all this, the Sports Guy stuff. And so that's how it happened. That's how it stuck. And it just kind of went from there. So that's kind of the deal. Is when I saw the Sports Guy, I was like, this is a great idea, but we might get a cease and desist from ESPN over this.
Yeah, I thought for the longest time, I thought the Bay Area Sports Guy and Steve Berman were two different guys. So that's the funny part about it.
Well, it's true. I have multiple personalities.
Oh gosh, can we see them all? No, just kidding. No, but I thought that you were two different people because I saw, and then when you first started writing for the Athletic, I saw the byline and I saw the picture that goes with it at the bottom or wherever I saw it, and I was like, oh, it says Bay Area Sports Guy. It's the same guy. That's what he looks like. So there we go.
Yeah.
That's I had to tell you about
The
that. Yeah,
mystery has been solved.
the mystery has been solved. So anybody that was wondering the same thing that I was wondering, there's the answer. So was it difficult, making a move to like a position where you're not your own boss? Was it difficult? I know you've had experience with editors and stuff in the past, but doing a blog type thing for a long period of time and then moving to a place like the Athletic, is there some kind of change that plays into that, or are you just kind of still doing your own thing?
It was pretty natural because I had freelanced for other mainstreams publications, during my time with doing Barry Sports Guy. And around 2016, I started to see the writing on the wall for just blogs in general. Advertising dollars started drying up because companies realized that a lot of people had ad blocker and no one was clicking on banner ads. So all people wanted were either video ads, which no reader wants to play, or like autoplay. No one wants that, or advertorial, which is where you write a story like it's a legit story, but you're actually embedding a bunch of advertising stuff for your sponsor in the story so that people reading get pissed off, like, okay, you're just trying to sell me something. I just want to read actual information. So I knew in 2016 that I started scaling back and I was doing other things. And then in 2017, when the Athletic Bay Area came about, Tim Count reached out and asked if I would be a freelance media columnist. So I wrote a media column once a week from August of 2017 until I got hired in July of 2019. And then by then, I was looking for a content job of some sort full time. Anyway, I wanted to work for the Athletic. I wasn't sure if it was going to be able to happen, but then when it opened up, then I jumped at that. So it wasn't a situation where I knew I was getting into because I'd been working for the Athletic in a sense for a couple of years. So it wasn't that big of a deal. And like you said, I've had editors before. I mean, I was on Deadline, covering, high school football games on Friday nights for, the San Ramon Valley Times and the San Mateo Times and the Mercury News and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, sometimes I would like to just be able to go out and say whatever the hell I want to say. But, it's as far as jobs go, and I've worked for different corporations in my life, could be a lot worse than writing about sports and having multiple editors. And actually, the editors at the Athletic, every story gets edited by two people minimum. So that actually helps quite a bit because it's really difficult. I learned to edit your own stuff. I mean, I edited a bunch of contributing writers at Barry Sports Guy, and I thought good at editing their stuff, but my own stuff, I was terrible at editing, I mean, because you read your own stuff and you just kind of gloss over it. You think, oh, this is great, genius, or you just miss a mistake, or you don't realize that you're being too repetitive with what you're writing. You wrote the same word in the same paragraph 2 or 3 times. That kind of stuff you don't pick up until either someone else reads it or you wait like a day and then edit it. But a lot of times in the blog world, you're just writing and then posting immediately. So Yeah, it's actually been very positive.
Yeah, your media columns are great. They're one of my favorite pieces on the
Thank
entire
you.
website. And I'm someone that's so fascinated by media transactions for some odd reason. This person joins a different publication. Mike Krukow is doing
Yep.
less road games. How did you kind of get into that fascination yourself? Because I think it's really like people want to know that Greg Papa hopped over to KNBR and stuff like that. So how did you kind of get into covering media?
When with Barry, a sports guy, I always listened to a lot of KNBRs. This is before 95.7 even started. And I would just write, stuff about what Gary would say or what Ralph and Tom would say, or annoying commercials that they'd play constantly and that kind of stuff. Just different posts and stuff. And I noticed that those are getting a lot of traction. And then from there, I started getting some people telling me about inside stuff about what was going on. From there, I would hear certain things and report on them. And I realized that people were pretty darn interested. And then I was able to break the story that Ralph Barbieri was fired. I mean, I heard about it right after he was let out the door. So and then that broke my site. My server couldn't handle it. The traffic was too high. And so from there, it's just always been a regular thing of, all right, I'm going to report on this stuff as a regular thing because it's a niche that not everyone is doing. I went to, especially, the teams that credentialed me were it was the Warriors, then it was the Giants, and then it was the 49ers who credentialed me when I was an independent sports writer. But I mean, I could get some stuff that I could write in a way that was unique and I could cover different angles and I could maybe get to talk to different players in the locker rooms and clubhouse that, others weren't talking to. But for the most part, you're kind of covering the same thing as a bunch of other people. And in this case, there's really no legit media person or somebody on the media beat who people actually respect who's doing it around here. I mean, there is somebody who writes about it, but he's wrong all the time and lies all the time. We don't need to mention him by name, Bruce Lieberman. And so it's kind of a fun little niche to be in. There's people who do it nationally. Like we have Richard Deitch on for our company. Andrew Marchand does it for the New York Post. Then you also have, Awful Announcing. I think Brian Curtis does a really nice job with The Ringer on a lot of his media features, and he's got a great podcast too, The Press Box. But there's not a lot of us who cover it, so it's kind of a good place to be because sports media is a really competitive place. So if you can, I do think of myself as more than a media columnist, and I do, I got sports takes like everybody, but it is an interesting area. And I know that at least in terms of media, that's what they read of what I write more than anything else. When I go to the press boxes, I was just at the A's game for opening night. And, a friend of mine in there is like, oh man, what are you going to be writing about for this week's media column? That's what they all read because they all want to read about themselves too and their business. So it's been fun that way, but that's how I got into it really was I started having inside sources giving me information when I was a Barry Sports guy. And I was like, well, I guess this is kind of what I'm doing now.
So have you ever had that leads me into this question. Have you ever had an instance where like one of the network heads or media personalities comes up to you after you write a column and goes, dude, what the heck was that? Like, what did you just write about me or something like that? Or what did you just write about my station? Has there ever been like an incident where, I don't want you to go too in detail about it. But
A ton,
yeah,
a ton. Yeah. Media people, by and large, don't have the thickest skin. So some do, but a lot do not. So yes, just recently, KNBR 95.7, the ratings thing. I'm getting different ratings numbers from both stations. They're all both. I end up pissing off both sides with what was written because they both were upset about what numbers I used, how they were portrayed. I've had run-ins with multiple sports talk hosts. Most of them I get along well with 98% of other media people in the area. most of them, so it's not like I go into a press box back in the day when we used to do that all the time. It's starting to come around more and more now, I guess, pretty soon here. But but back in normal times, I didn't have to be like, oh, who's mad at me? There's a couple guys who still aren't huge fans of me, but even them, they don't bug me too much. But in terms of stuff where I end up hearing about it later, absolutely. And a lot of times they don't even go to me; they go above me and complain to my editors, even the CEO of the company. Before I even got hired, there was an NBC executive who's no longer there who complained to our founders when I was a freelancer about something that I wrote, which was a legit report that was totally true. So, but he was all upset about it, and so and the founders are like, okay, well, we're not going to change it. We back our guy kind of deal. But yes, this kind of stuff happens all the time. People definitely get upset. That happens too with sports. I mean, you'll get pushback from PR teams about certain things. But yeah, with the media, same thing.
So if Lee Hammer would walk into the press box, you wouldn't go, "Oh God, here he comes."
No. He actually he invited me to his office one time years ago when he was still the program director at KNBR, and to discuss, but pretty much it was to like let me know that KNBR was just dominating in the ratings, and and anything you hear to the contrary is false. But I don't think he was a big fan of me, which is fine. I mean, when you're in the media, if your goal is to be friends with the people you're covering, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, 100%. That's the first thing they teach us in journalism school when we get into the beat section is, you can never get too close to your sources. So
Nope.
that's such a big tip. So yeah, you mentioned you do put the data in terms of ratings in your stories, in your media columns. When you're projecting for the future, do you take into account, well, the Giants season just started, KNBR is going to boom, or the Warriors have a nice 3-4 game run, 95.7 is going to boom, or is it deeper than that?
Well, I don't really project. I just look at what's happened.
Mm.
Yeah, sometimes I'll throw out ideas about what I think might occur. Like I did, recently. So, with the Giants starting back up, I think, their numbers for the numbers for March probably won't be much higher, but the numbers for April might see a boost. And if the Warriors stay relevant, and that hasn't happened, well, I guess they're still relevant, but they've had some struggles lately. But that helps 95.7 to an extent, not as directly as the Giants help KNBR. But yeah, you look at all that kind of stuff. I think it's more when you look back on, say, oh, look at these numbers, what happened here, and they start thinking, oh yeah, well, the Giants, like back in last summer when the Giants started playing well, you saw some really good numbers, especially in the evenings to a certain extent, but Murph and Max numbers just started skyrocketing. I think it helped that they got rid of Bonnie Jill Athlon because she was never a fit, and I don't think any of the hosts are really that comfortable when she was there. And they've added a lot more Adam Copeland, and I think that show sort of flows more naturally now. But once the Giants stopped playing, Murph and Max still had an advantage in the mornings, a sizable one, but they weren't absolutely just killing it in the ratings like they were when the Giants were, playing a few months earlier. So yeah, a lot of that gets taken into account, but I don't really worry too much about projecting. I'll let the station managers and program directors worry about that. I don't care who wins the ratings, but that's the thing that's funny is, I've had people from KNBR say I'm pro 95.7. I've had people from 95.7 say I'm like a shield for KNBR. I couldn't care less about which station wins these. I don't even get to go on the stations anymore. I used to be a guest on, on their shows. And then, my editor, Tim Kawakami, told me since I'm covering media, I can't do it anymore. So I'm not even on any of the shows. Obviously I don't get paid by either station. So I just want it to be competitive because that's more interesting for me selfishly.
Yeah. And one of my favorite episodes of this show was Joe Shasky, who came on and did a great show, and he's great. He's another Reardon guy. So we went to the same
Absolutely.
school. So he's great. It was a great show. And yeah, but yeah,
That was
he's
the last
great.
show I was allowed to be on. I was on his show, and KNBR's program director, Jeremiah Crow, went to him and was like, well, what's he doing on, 95.7? It's obvious that he's in, their pocket or whatever. And the truth was just, Joe is a friend of mine, and he asked if I would come on a Saturday morning, no less. Like, I was going to my day job, and I was on my, so I parked in the parking lot and talked to him for 10 minutes about like the Warriors and the Niners or whatever. Didn't even think anything of it. And then from there, no more appearances, Berman. I was like, okay.
Yeah, he's great though. He's got a ton of energy.
Oh yeah.
And he started from scratch. He was never, not a
He
didn't go
started
to
as a
school.
caller.
Yes. Didn't go to school for any of it. He did it the most organic possible way, and most unlikely way, but he's there now. So, and he's doing a good job with that new morning show they have. But podcasting is the newest trend. I guess it's been around for a little bit, but I mean, now every other week somebody's starting one and everybody has one. What's kind of your take on the amount of them and kind of how they're evolving through the industry?
There's a lot there. I wrote about it several months ago about some of the local podcasts and how they're dealing with the pandemic, especially. But was it really pandemic related? I have to look back and see what I was writing. It was about the local podcasts and sort of their business models. For a while, it looked like it was a lot like blogs back in the late 2000s, where it kind of seemed like if you started one and it was good, you're going to end up getting bought for like $1 million by some bigger company at some point, and that was happening to some people. And NBC Sports Bay Area actually approached me and they wanted to make me an affiliate of theirs, but it never happened. And I don't think they ever really wanted to put forth the money it would have taken for me to, give up all, my whole deal to them. But podcasts kind of the same way. It seemed like there was unlimited growth potential. Everyone's podcasting. Advertisers love podcasts because you could just dip right in, give like a personalized ad, and the person's sort of captive audience. And then the pandemic hit, and a lot of these podcasting advertisers stopped spending money on marketing because no one was buying their products. It was, a lot of stuff like, mattress companies and, I think other than meal kit delivery services, I don't think many things are doing that well at the beginning stages of the pandemic that advertise on podcasts. So then all of a sudden it kind of shrunk back a little bit in terms of, it's a great medium. It's I think what a lot of, especially younger people are going towards, because the commercials aren't as frequent. There aren't as many of them. And you can really specialize on topics as opposed to listen to, 2 guys or 3 guys talk about a bunch of stuff that you don't care about. You can go, find your Giants podcast. You can go find your Sharks podcast, whatever. The only thing that it doesn't have is the live element, which I think some people are kind of trying to get around by doing stuff like Locker Room and live shows and then maybe posting those afterwards. But if you have the option to listen to it live if you want to, that's the only thing that terrestrial radio I think has going for it, that other than the rights to, to be flagship stations for some of these teams, is that sort of element of if something breaks on, it's a huge transaction. Okay, the Niners just drafted Mac Jones and everyone's, losing their mind. You could have an immediate reaction on radio as opposed to podcasts where you got to record it, you got to edit it, then you got to post it, you got to wait for Apple to put it on their deal, all that kind of stuff, Spotify. So there's kind of pitfalls to it that, and also that there are, it seems, so many. I mean, there's a lot of really good ones. So how much time do people really have? Also, I think with the lack of commuting that people are doing, I think that's hurt sports talk radio and podcasts, because you don't have people who are loading up podcasts and going on BART for an hour as much as you did, over a year ago, or sitting in their cars for, an hour and a half, across the Bay Bridge listening to 95.7 or KNBR. So everything's kind of changed, but I think podcasts are definitely not going away. The barrier to entry is very low, and a lot of people are really good, but I think that when you have so many sort of like blogs, all these blogs popped up, and then people were like, man, this is a lot of work for not very much money. They started kind of following us to the side. And I think you'll see a lot of that with podcasts too, where the cream rises to the top. And then people, unless you really love it, aren't going to stick with it for a super long amount of time.
Yeah, 100%. And people could listen to 10 different Giants podcasts, 10 different 49ers podcasts,
Yep.
10 different Warriors podcasts. But Steve Berman is on RizzoCast. So that's where you could catch Steve Berman.
Hell yeah.
No. But yeah, don't go looking for like a check or anything, because I don't make anything from this. Anyways, every year.
Oh, I wasn't, man. Come on now.
Every year we ask ourselves, when Dave Fleming will be full-time at ESPN, when Dave Fleming will be full-time. He's held on to that Giants job. And, I genuinely think that he really likes it. From your point of view, as somebody who has talked to him about this, what is kind of an explanation as to why he's held on for so long?
Yeah, I don't think he's leaving, to be honest. I think that he likes the situation where he's a guy who really likes to be busy. He was telling me the thing that really drove him crazy at the beginning of the pandemic was when sports was shut down and there was nothing to do. And he ended up driving with his family back east to Virginia to visit other family and hanging out. And that's when I talked to him for the first time during the pandemic. But he was just twiddling his thumbs going crazy because he wanted stuff to do. And he likes his arrangement with ESPN where he's able to do a bunch of different sports and still do the daily work with the Giants. Now he's going to miss a little bit of time, like the Masters. He's there with ESPN, so he's not going to be there for the home opener. And I asked him about that recently for a story on The Athletic, and he was disappointed for sure that he's going to miss the home opener. But it's Augusta, so yeah, he's a big golfer, and I think he did a fantastic job at the PGA at Harding Park. I think people were, I don't know about surprised, but took notice of like, man, this guy sounds like he's been doing this for a long time. And this is his first bit of golf coverage. He's great on football. He's great on basketball. So he also does some ESPN baseball too, national games. So the Giants situation is a great one too. I mean, it's a legacy team that really cares about the quality of the broadcast much more than I would say the majority of professional franchises. They put their money where their mouth is. Kruk and Kipe and Jon and Dave are well paid for what they do. Jon is going to be doing it. I bet I think he's probably going to try to do it as long as Vinny did, but for the Dodgers. But I think Dave is going to be the guy who's the number one guy when he gets to that sort of age of, because he's only, I think probably like 45 right now. So he could do this another, 30 to 40 years if he wants to. And I think that he probably will. I think he likes living in San Francisco. And if ESPN came to him and was like, all right, we just want you all to ourselves. We want you on Monday Night Football. We want you on Sunday Night Baseball. We're going to pay you X amount to do so. Then, yeah, he probably would say, I love the Giants, but how do you, give up the chance to be the next Al Michaels, or Jim Nantz? But I don't know. I don't see that happening. I think that he is very, very happy where he is. And I think also it helps that he likes his coworkers so much. I mean, him and Jon are close, hanging out with Kruk and Kipe on a daily basis. That doesn't suck. So I think they have a fun time together. And I think the Giants also show appreciation in many ways for what they do and what they bring to the fans.
I know you wrote about this. I'm trying to figure out which of the four it was, but you hung out with one of them for the first few innings of a game. Is that right? I know you wrote about it. Who?
It was Jon. It was great. I actually just wanted to interview him, just in general. So I came up there and he asked me to come up before the game, and I kind of saw him prepare. And he's like, hey, you want to sit down and just hang out? And I was like, yeah. So I just sat there with the headset on, and Darren Chan was behind me on the controls, guy who engineers everything for KNBR, and Jon Miller was alone that night. I don't know where Dave was. I don't remember. I don't know if he was just off or he's I think it might have been a Friday night where he was doing something with ESPN college football or something. But yeah, just sitting there next to Jon and watching him call the game, it was a surreal type of deal because that sound coming over your headphones is the exact same sound that I've been hearing over my headphones for decades. But then I look over and dude's right next to me in a Giants hat, and telling his stories and looking through his notes. And so, it was great. I've one of the best things about being the media columnist for The Athletic is that it definitely gives you some access that I wouldn't have had before to a certain extent, so that I've actually been able to kind of get to know all these guys, and they're all, really cool guys in their own ways. And that goes for Ken Korak as well, who's one of the nicest guys in media and underrated and fantastic baseball announcer. I mean, he's got pipes that are just ridiculous. And, so a lot of these guys are, that the Bay Area we are lucky with the broadcasting overall. I mean, there's a couple of exceptions maybe, or one I can think of, but for the most part, we have some really outstanding broadcasters. And it was fun to hang out with Jon and catch just a few innings. I almost felt guilty. I was like, okay, well, it's been like 3 innings now. Hey, Jon, I guess I should probably go, and I probably just should have not even thought about that and been shy, just stayed the whole 9 and waited until they kicked me out.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And I'm sure a lot of people think about, probably dream of having a situation like that. And you write about it, and there you are with a firsthand experience of it. And me and Jon are kind of neighbors, I guess. He lives in Moss Beach and I'm in Pacifica, just to the
oh, beautiful.
So I'm kind of right next to him. I was just over there down that way yesterday. So pretty awesome. So Steve, I appreciate you taking the time, man. It was awesome to have you, awesome to talk to you, of course. And I know it's been hard to schedule people here, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, anytime. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. And anytime you want to have me back on, if you do, then I know you told me it was Kerry Crowley was on, and that's a tough act to follow. So hopefully I did okay, but I appreciate you having me on the RizzoCast.
Yeah, don't tell Kerry this, but you probably outdid him. Yeah. So.
Oh, hold on a second.
Uh-oh.
Text him right now.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Now, Kerry's my guy, and I'm sure that he was great too. You were there at that trivia night that we held, the Giants trivia.
I was on his team.
You were on his team.
I was on his team.
I can't remember who was on all the teams, but I remember that we didn't win because we didn't have Kerry, and your team won, right? Or was it?
I forget.
Or maybe it was Copeland's team that won. Either way, there was the lightning round where Thomas Todd, the trivia host, he had lists all these different totally obscure Giants in some category.
It was Giants that have hit 10 home runs in a season, or have gotten 10 wins in a season.
10 wins in a season. Okay. And then, so, every team put out one person, and the last person to either state a correct answer that hasn't been repeated is the champion. So Kerry won, and then hey, congratulations, Kerry. Thomas is like, all right, we're going to move on to blah, blah. And Kerry's like, no, keep going. And so then Tom was like, okay. And so Kerry just went, I don't know how many more pitches it was. It was like 10 or 15. He just kept going, bam, bam, Trevor Wilson, blah, and all of us are just like, dude, you are an encyclopedia. So I could see why he's gotten to where he's gotten at his age. He's a bright young star in this sports media scene for sure. He's doing good stuff too in terms of his kind of school for online training for broadcasters, which I wrote about. So thank you for saying that. I surpassed him, but I think you're just being, you're just kind of flattering me for no reason, and it's not true.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, no, but I took Kerry's, I took Kerry's future in sports writing. It was a lot of fun and learned a lot. Steve, you guys could follow Steve on Twitter or follow the Bay Area Sports Guy. Follow him so you could figure out that he is not two different people, as I thought before. And
I'm not LOL KNBR either.
A lot of people, do you get that a lot?
A lot of people over the years go, oh, well, you guys are the same person. Why are you guys tweeting each other? No, I've actually met the person who is LOL KNBR. He's very anonymous, but it's not me.
Yeah, don't ruin it, because it's funny because there's two different accounts now, and one of them is obnoxious and one of them's not. So
yes, the one who copied LOL KNBR's whole steez. Yeah, LOL KNBR host. He's got a different sort of tact for what he does. But no, I am not either one of those guys.
Yeah. So LOL KNBR host is bound to unfollow the both of us after that. All right. It's at BA Sports Guy. So follow him on Twitter. Keep up with this stuff on The Athletic. His media columns are great. His other stuff is great. Read it. And follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RizzoCast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcast. If I'm missing one, it's on it. It's on one of the ones I'm missing, but we're on a lot of them. But go check it out. Subscribe, do all the things, thumbs up. Yep, all of it. And we'll see you next time.